End up with is like a watercolour effect that looks realistic, not like the filter, and we're going to end up with something, you know, that kind of looks like that, and you know, you can build it into extra things like this. You know, something like that probably take 2 or 3 minutes once you've done it once or twice. So what we will do, what you're supposed to start with, if you know you want this sort of watercolour effect, okay, and you know you're no good at painting, and you really don't have the time to paint and scan in and wait for it to dry and all this sort of rubbish. Okay, what you're supposed to start with is a piece of paper like that. Okay, make some marks on it. I'm going to scan it in. No one's ever going to do that. Alright, so instead look around the internet, type in watercolour brush here, watercolour marks, that sort of stuff, and you'll find this sort of things floating around on Google. But we're going to assume that we've done it the proper way. So when we're scanning this piece of paper, we want to make some brushes from this, okay, to work with. So to make a brush, it's very simple. We grab something like a lasso, a freehand lasso, whatever, and then we select the object we want to make a brush from. So I just want this. I'm not being too precise, doesn't matter. Okay, I just want the darker areas. I know Photoshop will get rid of the lighter areas for me. So once I've made the selection, all I do is go to Edit from the menus, and we go down to Define Brush Preset. There it is, about halfway down. Okay, give the brush a name. Nobody ever does, so just click OK. And that's now in Photoshop. I'm finished with that page now, I can get rid of that. We'll go back to where we were, and if we go to our paintbrush and we just right click for now, we can see down here, these are the brushes that we made. They're at the bottom of my brush list. I'll use those in a second. The only thing I did was get a piece of old paper, you can see it says old paper there, put it in as a layer. I'm going to use that to paint over the top of, just to give me a background. Okay, so let's have a new blank layer, and we'll grab a paintbrush. We'll get one of those watercolour brushes that we had. Nice. That one's good. And then what we do is we make a random mess almost in roughly the same shape as the rose. So I'm going to use the rose to choose some colours from. I'll use the eyedropper tool just to pick out maybe a light pink here like that. And then we'll go to that blank layer, we'll grab the paintbrush, and then we'll literally stamp this down. And when you create brushes like this, just stamp them down. Don't try and paint with them because it's just not going to work. Okay, so we stamp it down, and you can see it doesn't look too bad. Let's have a different sort of pink like that, and maybe make the brush a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller like this, and we just slowly start to build it up. We're just making a random mess. We're not going to worry too much about it. The more brushes you have, the easier it is, because you can mix and match them together like that, and you can see how it's slowly starting to come together. And even if you zoom in, you can see it looks quite detailed, it looks quite realistic. And then the idea is we work through, we make kind of a mess on here. What I'm after is the Blue Peter one, this one we made earlier. Okay, so you'll end up with something like that. You just play around with it, build the colours up, you know, put lighter ones in there, darker ones. I've got lots of different brushes happening in here as well. Right, so we've got the mess. All right, it's in roughly the right shape, but we've got no detail on there. So we want to pick out some detail, and we'll do that from the original image. Now, we'll go back to the original, there it is, and we'll use our selection tool to pick out some detail. And the selection tool we're going to use is the color range tool. Okay, he's in the menus. Now, color range is very useful. Just move them off to the side here. We can click on parts of our image, and we can see what it's going to select in this little preview here. We go back to the main screen, it's given us the selection. I can now use that on something. Let's put the paper back on, let's put the flower mess back on, let's make a new layer. So what I'll do now is just go Edit, Fill, Foreground Colour, like that. Let's deselect that. So that's brought out the detail for me. But now it's covering up the mess or the paint effect that I used earlier. But if I change the blend mode to something else, you can see there's a whole list of things we can pick from. And the idea is with this is you pick the one that you think works the best. Okay, it's not too bad, could be better, but It's just about picking the right one. What we are going to do is duplicate the layer, because you never know, we might want to come back and use it. And then what we will do is use a filter. Okay, we don't use filters very often because they are generally not very good on their own. Alright, but there is one in here which is kind of good for creating a pencil effect, and it's not the pencil filter. Okay, we're going to start with our image. We're going to go into filters, we're going to go into the filter gallery. Yeah, you've got things like brush strokes, and there are things in here that say ink outlines, but you know, they don't really look like ink outlines, they just look a bit rubbish. But we're going to go through to stylize. There's one in here called glowing edges. Okay, I'm happy with that, it looks okay. We now click OK. You're kind of thinking, yeah, that looks nothing like a sketch. We just need to do two more things to it. The first one is we need to make, because it's a sketch, we want white paper and not the black background like it's got there. First thing we can do is go to Image, Adjustments, Invert. We know we can do that. Okay, so we've now got a white background, but we've got all these neon colours happening. We want to get rid of those. So we'll go to Image, Adjustments again, and we'll go into black and white. And we'll make it black and white. Right, so we're kind of getting there now. We've got some black lines, we've got a bit of white paper happening there. Let's put it on top of the painting. Let's move him all the way up to the top there. We'll turn on our paper, we'll turn on the paint that we had. We'll also turn on the detail layer as well. Alright, we now need to get that pencil to interact with everything else that's happening. Okay, so we need to change its blend mode. You can see it's set to normal. I know the one that will work for this is going to be multiply. So if I click multiply, you'll see all the white disappears. Make it a bit more subtle, like that. So we build it up layer by layer.